Hello and welcome to episode 181 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host Sigmund Judge, and I'm joined once again by my co-host Mr. Devon Dundee. How's the weather? Because over here, at least, it's sunny one moment, then the sun has gone again the next. A little bit like iTunes wish lists were on Apple TV platforms.
Well, unlike those wish lists, Sigmund, the sun here has been unrelenting. And I know when I step outside every morning what the weather's going to be like. I don't have to check the app or wonder. It's going to be hot. But it's really interesting you mentioned the iTunes movies and TV shows apps on tvOS, of course, because in the latest beta that came out this week, there's a change with them again. And they've been through a lot the past couple of years. That used to be where you'd go to buy your TV shows and films to add them to your library. And now Apple has consolidated all of that functionality into the TV app. And there was a moment when those apps actually disappeared from our home screens with the point update, right? And there was a lot of backlash among collectors because, of course, that's where your wish lists were located. And one of the features Apple never carried over to the TV app was wish lists. And so even now, up to this point, in the tvOS 26 beta, those wish lists still exclusively appear in the TV shows and movies apps. So for those who need them, the app doesn't really do anything other than that. When you open it, it tells you, well, you got to go to the TV app now. And it kind of reminds me of something I see when I go out and about sometimes. It's like if someone has to leave work really quickly for 10 minutes for lunch, they'll just scribble a handwritten note and paste it on the door and say, be back in 10 minutes, or use other door, something like that. That's what this reminds me of. The fact that these are still here, but they're really just holding on to this legacy feature that people still want while really just pointing people to the new way of doing it. I don't know. To me, it feels like it's time for that wishlist feature to come to the TV app so that we can all be done with these for good. But for those of us who aren't using wishlists, I guess now you have the option, or you will with tvOS 26, to hide those apps and save that space on your home screen.
Yeah, I mean, other storefronts, I think, do a lot more with people's purchases, right? With their libraries. You can create collections and the order in which those collections go. I'm thinking about you Star Wars fans out there, and if you want to go chronological or the order in which they were released. But they also include integration with wish lists. I'm thinking Fandango at Home, which was previously Voodoo. And what I really like about that is if I go onto their storefront and something I've marked as being interested in is in my wish list and it's come down in price, I'll get a notification in that system to make me aware of the show or film that I'd wish listed has come down in price. I think it's something that Apple are already missing out on, especially that they've got a notification system for the TV app, which I think when it first got integrated in, we were like, okay, what is that for? And then scores came, and of course we all got prompted about buying tickets for F1 the movie. Beyond, I think, advertising Apple originals, there could be a way of really giving service to their partnered studios when it comes to the store. I do wonder if the majority of the crowd at Apple TV are subscribers rather than buyers. That makes sense. The idea of just consuming everything and having that kind of open buffet style service is great for entertainment and has made things a lot more accessible. But there are still people that want that a la carte style of consuming video, and they want some kind of form of ownership, whether that's, purchasing a license or buying a physical disc. So I really hope Apple can do something in terms of catering for that audience pretty soon. But for everyone else, come September, you will at least be able to remove iTunes movies and the TV show apps alongside the Apple Music Karaoke app icon as well. That's going to come with tvOS 26 in just under a month's time, Devon. Where did the time go?
Yeah, the summer has flown by. It really is wild that we're already gearing up for what we're expecting to be a September Apple event. You can almost set your clocks to it at this point. So, yeah, it's wild how quickly the summer has gone, how these betas are coming together. We're on the weekly beta updates now as we push ever closer to that release candidate and then the final release for everybody, presumably next month. In the meantime, though, there's still plenty to talk about in the world of Apple TV. So this week on the show, we're going to recap Apple Original Series Smoke. We're going to catch up on all the latest news from the world of Apple TV. But we're going to start with new rumored details of the next generation Apple TV 4K. Now, this updated Apple TV 4K is a device we've been talking about for quite some time, Sigmund. We've heard lots of rumors about when it was coming, what it's going to have when it comes. Of course, the Apple TV is never on a regular schedule. I think we had back-to-back years, 2021 and 2022, where it got updated, and then since then, we've been on the third generation Apple TV 4K. So it's just not one of those devices that we ever can really anticipate when it's going to get updated. But as they say, where there's smoke, there's fire, and we're continuing to see more and more of these rumors coming. This week, we got some more evidence by way of Mac Rumors contributor Aaron Paris, who found some hardware identifiers in code from Apple for a bunch of devices. Again, a lot of these have been rumored, but we weren't really sure exactly what chips and what the details were going to be. So here's what Aaron found evidence of. A HomePod Mini with a more modern S-Series chip. Again, makes a lot of sense, something we've heard about. Apple Studio Display 2 that's currently in testing. An iPad Mini with an A19 Pro chip. A base-level iPad with an A18 chip. An Apple Vision Pro with an M5 chip. Now, this is interesting because Mark Gurman has been talking about an Apple Vision Pro update with an M4. So presumably maybe Apple's testing both of them right now, but at least this code reference was saying M5, which is a chip that we haven't even seen yet. So that would really put Apple Vision Pro on the cutting edge in terms of the M series. Of course, what's most interesting to us is the rumored Apple TV, which this code suggests is going to have the A17 Pro chip. Now, we've gone back and forth lots on what chip the next Apple TV could have. This would be the same chip as the iPhone 15 Pro and the current iPad Mini. So not the one that's mentioned in this code, but the one that is currently being sold, which is a really interesting chip. It's on that process that we all thought was going away when Apple went from M3 to M4. We all thought that Apple was kind of brushing over this way of making chips, but that A17 Pro has stuck around for quite some time in the iPad Mini, and now, of course, the code is pointing to it coming to the Apple TV very soon.
Devon, iPad Mini is one of my favorite devices. We've talked about this before, right? At one point, I think we both foregoed the iPad Pro and were iPad Mini users at the same time. I think that happened. The interesting thing about the A17 Pro chip in the iPad Mini is that it was not the same A17 Pro chip as the one that debuted with the iPhone 15 Pro phones, right? Slight difference there with regard to the number of graphics cores.
Yeah, so the term when it comes to these chips is binning, and the idea is that chips that don't pass all the tests but have most of their cores working can still be repurposed for other devices, and we've seen this with lots of different things that Apple's doing. Sometimes even like the base M-series chip will have one less core and you can actually pay extra to get that extra core and things like that. So yeah, it was interesting when the iPad Mini came out, it was the A17 Pro in terms of CPU, but in terms of GPU, it had one less core, which of course would impact its performance in terms of games and video and things like that. So the question would be then, if the A17 Pro is coming to the Apple TV, are we going to get that full graphics version of it, or are we going to get the version that's in the iPad Mini? And I feel like, at least what we've been talking about, is the main benefit of moving to a new chip for the Apple TV is less the CPU processing, because it does a great job on navigation and menus and loading and things like that for the most part, unless you get a really huge library, which is, that's always going to continue to be an issue, at least for the foreseeable future. But in terms of gaming and console level gaming, that's where this chip jump could really make a difference, because alongside the M3 generation and the A17 Pro, Apple introduced graphics cores that are capable of hardware ray tracing. And that is just a big leap in terms of video game performance and the kind of graphics that you can get out of it. And so this is something that I've been excited about ever since Apple introduced it. And I've been looking forward to it coming to the Apple TV, but it'll be interesting to see is it getting that full performance that we saw on the iPhone, or is it going to be that slightly diminished performance we're seeing in the iPad mini, which is still capable of running those same games, but it doesn't quite have the same oomph because it is that bin chip.
I think also right now we've got AV1 decoding, but it's software based. It's not hardware based on the current Apple TV generation. So I'd imagine A17 Pro is going to be able to deal with that miss at the moment. It will also be interesting to see. I think the A17 Pro was the first to really, tout 8K as part of the iPhone Pro's feature set. And maybe there's some 8K playback opportunities there. Even if it's not necessarily because you've got an 8K display, maybe it can do some kind of up-resing of what we have currently. That's another form of artificial intelligence that we don't really talk about when it comes to Apple intelligence. But I'm going to imagine, and well, hopefully we won't have to imagine for too long, Apple intelligence is going to be a big part of the Apple TV story, whatever chip it's going to have inside. I think A17 Pro is really the bare minimum that we can expect. Interestingly, though, do they call it the A17 Pro? And do they change the name of the Apple TV to give it a little bit of a differentiation between Apple TV app on all of your other devices, Apple TV Plus, and, well, this is the Pro experience. Apple TV Pro. What do you think?
We are going to make it happen one way or another, Sigmund, just by speaking it so many times. I think this would be a great opportunity to do it. Apple loves their Pro monikers on things. This is a Pro chip that is supposedly coming to the Apple TV, so this would be the opportunity to do it. There's no rumors as far as we can tell in the code in terms of like differentiating between models. Like maybe there's one with the standard A17 and one with the Pro, but they could move the whole line to Pro, or they could introduce this as like a higher end version and maybe keep the current version around at a lower price point. So there's a lot they could do if they want to take this to the Pro level, but I definitely think this would be the opportunity to do it.
I've got another name suggestion for you. Let's take it all the way back to the original announcement of Apple TV and call it iTV. Not iTV as in iPhone TV, but EYE iTV.
Oh.
Because one thing that is driving me absolutely bonkers, Devon, is all of the mock-ups that I'm seeing, and I feel like they're being done on purpose to wind me up specifically. And that is this like superimposed camera lens that's being put on an Apple TV box by everyone reporting on what could be the next Apple TV. And it's so ridiculous that I'm sure someone's just having a good laugh. But one person did it. I think it was Mac Rumors initially. And then 9to5Mac joined in on it, Apple Insider. And I was like, oh no, please. We don't want this concept. If anything, if we're going to do this, I imagine we'll see either integration with Apple HomeKit cameras or a standalone camera that's wireless, or, partnered with Belkin maybe. They're the company that tends to stand in for the products that Apple don't necessarily want to launch by themselves. But then Apple have got some incredible camera tech, so...
Yeah, I think all those mock-ups are coming from a place of just seeing where tvOS has been going with continuity camera, FaceTime, even Apple Music Sing this year. There's a lot of camera stuff happening with the Apple TV, and the question is how many people are actually going to take the time to get a stand, to set up their iPhone, whether it be a permanent setup with a camera, which is possible now, or just that temporary where you set up your device and use it, kind of lend its camera to the Apple TV for a short time. It feels like there's an opportunity for some kind of integrated solution that Apple could sell you that's not a whole other iOS or iPadOS device. But I agree with you. I don't know that putting the lens right there on the body is the way to go, because all the different places that Apple TVs go, that lens could be staring at, the back of a wall, the inside of a entertainment system, who knows? In my setup, it would work fine because my Apple TV is just sitting on top of a shelf right in the middle of my TV stand. So it would work for me, but for a lot of people, I feel like a camera lens that would add probably quite a bit of cost to the Apple TV would just be a waste for a lot of people in their setups. So I agree with you. I think an integration of some kind. I don't know that Apple's ever going to come out with their own webcam for the Apple TV, although, I mean, I think it'd be awesome. But
eyesight,
yeah, bring it back. But I could see maybe an integration, like you said, with Belkin or some other third party, or even just like UVC camera support. Put a USB-C port on the back of it, let you plug in whatever camera you want, and just set it up, however is best for you. I don't know, but the camera built into the body, I agree with you. I don't really foresee that happening.
Wasn't there a rumor recently about Apple possibly developing a security camera? Is it possible that that's been lost in translation somehow?
Or, like you said, it could be multi-purpose, right? Apple likes to, when they enter a category, bring a little extra pizzazz to it. So it's like, yeah, you can see what's going on in your living room, or you could put one on your TV and make FaceTime calls with it too, because our cameras are so good. I could definitely see that. Yeah, there's been lots of rumors about, of course, Apple's home ambitions with, a HomePod with a display, which could also have a camera, which could, integrate with your Apple TV, and then the robot as well. But now there's more rumors about these more traditional smart home devices as well, locks and cameras and sensors that Apple could be getting into. And yeah, it's all very exciting, but it's all further out in the future than probably this particular Apple TV is going to be. Because I don't know about you, Sigmund, I have good feelings about either this fall or maybe this winter. Apple sometimes like to do an announcement like October, November time. I guess that would be more late fall, but they've gone as far as December before for some of those press release announcements. I have a pretty good feeling that we're going to be seeing this Apple TV before the end of the year. What do you think?
I think it's going to be the fall, just because of how special the lineup is for Apple Originals leading in from the fall, including the morning show, Slow Horses, and then so many more, including likely F1 the movie, All of You. It's really packed full from both the original series and the Apple Original Films team. I don't think you can wait too much longer than September, so September's what I've got nailed down. And I think that's going to be reflective in our predictions in a few weeks' time. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. This doesn't come around every year for us. It's a special time ahead.
It really is. And I should have known that you were already working on your predictions for this year's segment. This is my problem. I don't start early enough, and it sneaks up on me, and then I end up scrambling a little bit. So, yeah, I need to start thinking about my predictions as well, because not only are we expecting an Apple TV this fall, but, of course, lots of other hardware from Apple, including iPhones and Apple Watches, and who knows what else. It's going to be a really exciting time.
One thing, no doubt, you weren't able to predict, and wasn't in my predictions either, was a collaboration between the famed Japanese graphic artist Verdy and Beats. Veer, which is a bear-like figurine that is very much a trademark of Verdy, and that serves as a Beat pill holder. I don't remember if you remember the original Beats pill and Pill Boy, and there was a holder, and basically you could just put the Beats pill in his mouth. Well, you can do the same with Veer here from Verdy. It's going to be available via a limited drop tomorrow at Dover Street Market in London for £380, with a wider release across the US, China and Japan planned for later this year. And just, to put it out there, Dover Street Market, if I were going to pick one of these up, which I can say quite clearly I won't be, it would be the second time, because Dover Street Market is where I went for the original Apple Watch launch in 2015. 10 years ago, Devon. Oh, we're getting old.
Well, it may be time to take an anniversary trip over to Dover Street, at least to get pictures of Veer, because none of us are going to get to see it around the world for a while. So it's cool that it's in your neck of the woods for this exclusive drop. And, Beats Pill, Apple's just doing all kinds of weird stuff with that product since it came back. I love it. Just interesting collaborations, weird colors. There was a claw machine out in Hollywood for one weekend. I mean, I love these weird little micro things. And even though most people won't get to attend them, it's still cool that Apple's experimenting and doing some fun stuff, right?
Yeah, very, very much so. Something more, I'd say, traditional in a sense, but music-based as well, and that is Highest to Lowest. Its original soundtrack is now available for pre-order. It's going to ship in October on platinum-coloured double vinyl through A24 Films and their store. Another one for the guy that has a collection of Apple original soundtracks on vinyl with no apparatus to play them.
You need like a gold-plated vinyl player from Beats to match your platinum record and to go with the movie.
You know what? You make a really good point. Where are the gold Beats headphones that we've been waiting for the whole time? Are they not coming? I was hoping like Spike Lee may have made a few custom ones to sell on his store, but nothing.
We'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. But regardless, if you want to order the Highest to Lowest vinyl, we'll leave a link in the show notes to pre-order that and add it to your collection. Whether you have a vinyl player or not, we're not going to judge. In Apple Original News this week, a couple bits of kids and family news. First up is a trailer for Shape Island Season 2. That's coming out on August 29th. And then to complement last year's release of family series Wonder Pets Pets in the City, the entire 3-season run of the original Wonder Pet series is now available to stream on Apple TV+. So if you have a little one who was really into Wonder Pets Pets in the City, or if maybe you're just feeling a little nostalgic for the series from your childhood, all 3 seasons are now streaming. And I really like the way Apple fills out its kids and family library with these throwbacks that go along with the revivals. They did that with Yo Gabba Gabba recently, Wonder Pets. I think it's a cool way to add to the library and give kids a new thing to watch, at least new to them.
A show that hopefully isn't new to you, dear listener, is Palm Royale. It's a show that Devon and I loved to bits. Very, very funny. A great ending, a great cliffhanger, and we were so hopeful that there was going to be a second season. News came pretty quickly that there would be a second season, and I'm really, really happy to say that it's now been announced. The premiere date of that second season is November 12th. So adding to the stacked lineup of Apple original series and films from the late summer all the way through to winter and the holidays to actually the new year 2026. We don't want to wish our time away, but it's very, very exciting. This second season is going to star, of course, Kristen Wiig, Laura Dern, Alison Janney, Leslie Bibb, Ricky Martin, Josh Lucas, Amber Sade Robinson, and Kai Gerber, alongside Carol Burnett. And this second season sees Maxine left as a social pariah after a scandalous public breakdown. She'll have to draw on her deep well of cleverness and cunning to prove once and for all that not only she belongs, but she just might have what it takes to rule this town. Along the way, she will uncover untold truths and finally understand what this town is truly built on. Secrets, lies, and the occasional felony. And, well, this is going to be as scandalous as the last season, Devon. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, Palm Royale was a series we couldn't say enough good things about during its first season run. I'm excited to know that we're going to have its second season to keep us warm through those long winter months. And if you want a first look at the second season, if you're as excited as Sigmund and I are and can't wait to see what's coming, check out the link in the show notes because Apple gave us a quick glimpse at what we can expect.
Another show seeing its sophomore season hopefully very soon is Hijack, another show that we absolutely adored for different reasons. It's entered its 8-week process of sound mixing this week, nearing the end of the editing process. Co-creator and director Jim Field Smith updated fans of the show on social media, saying, always one of the most magical and creative parts of the filmmaking process. And as an ex-soundy wannabe musician and all-right control freak, a great opportunity for me to sit at the back and tell the magicians at Soho London-based sound facility Boom how to refine the sound of someone sucking eggs. A couple of other tidbits with regard to this upcoming second season. First off, colorist Andrew Daniel of London-based post-production house The Look is also working on Hijack's upcoming season, but that wasn't before the season was edited down from nearly 400 hours of footage shot to what will be an 8-hour overall runtime for its second season, which has me very, very interested just in terms of how many cameras are we going to be seeing at once, and how is that going to work. I guess my question above all else, and it's a question I pose to you, Devon, and everyone else listening, what's getting hijacked this time?
Well, Sigmund, I've got an all-original idea for you, okay? I want to pitch this. I really think this would be great, at least for Hijack, if not the second season, then the third. Okay, picture this with me. It's Christmas, and some bad guys take over a skyscraper, and Idris Elba has to rescue everyone from it. What do you think?
Sounds familiar. But yeah, ho, ho, ho. I mean, it could work. I thought you were going to go down the route of a public bus or maybe a cruise ship of some kind. Maybe there's a hidden joke here. The first film, a plane was hijacked. This time, maybe it's a train. And maybe come third season is an automobile.
Man, there are so many different ways they could go with this. Yeah, so many references they could make. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it's cool to know how far they are in the production process. I didn't realize it took a week for each episode to be sound mixed. That is a lot of work and really impressive. And I think it speaks to how much work goes into those mixes that, of course, we talk about all the time coming out of whatever speaker system we have and booming our homes, how much we enjoy them. But that's a lot of work being put into every little detail there. And it's cool to know that it's going on right now. Meanwhile, in development, Apple has landed the rights to a series adaptation of Barry Esler's Killer Collective book series from Pure Fiction and Seesaw Films. Spanning 18 novels and 4 short stories, the series follows ex-CIA operative John Rain, a half-Japanese, half-American assassin who specializes in making his kills look like natural causes. Now, those 18 novels, Sigmund, they're not all following John Rain. Some of them are his associates and different people within the universe. But I would say with that much source material, Apple having the rights to it, this could be another franchise burgeoning on Apple TV Plus here.
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we still got to get through the Mick Herron books first.
Yeah, that's gone past Slow Horses into other series of Mick Herron. So I love these adaptations, seeing them come to the screen, and also just these opportunities for world building here. I mean, this rich text to build on it. It really is cool to see, and to see Apple getting in there. And, they've done such a great job with Slow Horses. I have confidence that this one will be great as well.
Well, I mean, lots of adaptations, but let's talk about original stories. Season 3 of Severance. Some news came out this week about Ben Stiller. He's going to be stepping down from directing duties this upcoming season. And this was first reported by Variety. Now, responding on X to fans, Stiller said, "Yes, it's been full-time the last 8 months working on season 3, and I'm not going anywhere. We have incredible directors and the team that creates the show. I love directing it and look forward to doing so at some point again in the future. I feel like season 3 is going to be the best yet as we continue to evolve." And I got to say, I'm really chuffed about this. I know a lot of people were initially worried about it, but I remember the anthology feeling of different directors for Servant. M. Night Shyamalan took the lead on that, but then very much took a step back and allowed other talents to get involved. It does also follow the news we reported on a few months ago about Jessie Lee Gagne leaving as well as DOP for the show to pursue her feature film aspirations. Maybe there's an opportunity there where she's able to come back for a couple of episodes and direct as well. But maybe, just as season 2 really gave voice and a presence to Jessica Lee Gagne's talent. Maybe that's going to happen for someone else in the background right now for season 3.
Yeah, I think Severance is going to be in good hands. They've had 2 years to build up the team, and the more I hear about the creative process behind the show, the more confident I am in their ability to invest in other creators and fill those spots. And I have nothing but confidence that season 3 of Severance is going to be really special. And the fact that Ben Stiller is confident enough in his team to step away and pursue other things, I think that actually says a lot about what we can expect. Yeah, it gets me more excited for the creative voices we're going to get to see rather than nervous about the ones who may not be quite as involved in the same way.
Yeah, I think it was also really interesting, the reporting this week. You know, they were exploring what Ben Stiller was looking to do and where his next endeavours were going to be landing. Some at HBO, of course, some on Apple, including, you know, some feature films that will no doubt make their way to Apple that he's either directed or produced. And one of those films is Apple Original Films' latest acquisition, pickleball comedy The Dink, starring Jake Johnson and co-starring Ben Stiller, who is also a producer on the film. The story has been penned by Sean Clements, with direction from Josh Greenbaum, the director of Will and Harper and the highly anticipated Spaceballs sequel, and Care Bears movies. I didn't even know about the Care Bears movie. That has me very excited, especially if it has some kind of comedic appeal. Anyway, The Dink sees Jake Johnson play a washed-up tennis pro who, desperate to save a struggling club and earn his father's respect, is compelled to break a sacred vow and do the unthinkable: play pickleball. Others in the cast of the film include tennis champions Andy Roddick and John McEnroe, as well as Mary Steinbergen, Ed Harris, Chloe Feynman, Aaron Chan, Patton Oswalt, a personal favourite of mine, Chris Parnell, and Christine Taylor. So excited for this one. Of course, Jake Johnson also set to star in Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed, and Ben Stiller's upcoming documentary Stiller and Mirror makes its streaming debut in just a matter of months. But for those who can't wait, this next news may be of interest because we're about to talk film festival season. We have yet to hear what's happening at London Film Festival, but I can tell you I am accredited for this upcoming film festival in London with the BFI, so thank you to the team over there. But let's talk about the screenings we do know are happening during film festival season this year, starting with The Lost Bus, which will make its world premiere at the 50th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival this year on September 5th at the Princess of Wales Theatre, whilst both Mr. Scorsese and Stiller and Mirror, Nothing Is Lost, will make their world premieres at this year's New York Film Festival, taking place between September 26th and October 13th. And for film goers on the other side of the Atlantic, as I said, the lineup for London Film Festival this year has yet to be announced. That announcement is coming on September 3rd, ahead of its public programme that takes place between October 8th and October 19th, both in person, online, and expanded to cinemas around the UK. I'm going to make some predictions because obviously everyone else has shown their hands, Devon, and obviously we want to think about the British link here. So predictions for potential films and TV previews for London Film Festival. I'm going to go with Down Cemetery Road, I'm going to go with Pluribus, and I'm going to go with Prehistoric Planet, Ice Age, and who knows, maybe a special screening of the Slow Horses finale, which I think will coincide well with the festival. But we don't know for sure yet. And one thing we do know also is, you know, in terms of acquisitions, it's always worth having a look at what talents Apple have worked with before and what they've got going on. And, you know, it might be worth checking out a screening because next year you might see another All of You 12 months later on Apple TV+.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting festival season for sure, and we've got all that coming up very soon over the next couple of months. But in terms of this week, let's talk this week's Apple TV releases. Today we've got new episodes of Platonic and Acapulco. Then on Friday, we've got the paid video on-demand release of F1 the movie. It's going to be interesting to see, Sigmund, if there's anything special going on with this PVOD release. Of course, a huge film for Apple in theaters. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking forward to watching it on home video. I think the thing that I'm still looking out for, and I think this is something we talked about quite a bit, you and I, is the aspect ratio of the film. Will it be a standard 16:9 style for the home release, or at least on Vision Pro maybe? Will we get some of those dynamic aspect ratios? That's, of course, a technology that's coming with Vision OS 26 in the fall, but this would be a great way to preview it.
Yeah, I also think it would be really nice to see, an Apple original film, albeit distributed by Warner Brothers, and that's why I think it was delayed a week, because they wanted to get Superman out on PVOD last week, which is in 3D this week on Vision Pro. Anyway, I could also see maybe a surprise release of like a documentary on the making of F1 the movie for Apple TV Plus subscribers that don't necessarily want to fork out for the PVOD just yet. But I'm so excited to see what they do with this big release. The biggest release and the biggest earner of Brad Pitt's career. And I believe, if I'm correct, the biggest box office release for a sports movie ever. I think that was a new record that was made just this week. Or I've plucked it out of thin air, but I'm pretty sure I read that.
I'm going to take your word on it. Regardless, of course, lots of excitement around F1 the movie, and that will continue as it comes to home release and then eventually to Apple TV+. On Apple TV+, this Friday, we've got the premiere of Invasion Season 2. We'll be talking more about that next week, as well as new episodes of Chief of War and Foundation. Then, of course, Friday Night Baseball has the Royals versus the Tigers at 7:10 p.m. Eastern, and the Mets versus the Braves just 5 minutes later at 7:15 p.m. Eastern, so make sure to pull out your multi-view for that. All week long on MLS Season Pass, the Leagues Cup and regular season play continues, and we've got just a ton of extras for our listeners this week, Sigmund. We've got a new video from Pluribus called Sorry About the Blood, another kind of viral marketing thing, plug for that phone number that you can sign up for. Very interesting to see what they're doing with the marketing there. For Severance, we've got choreography and merriment at Cinespia. Everywhere Tremel Tillman goes now, Sigmund, I've heard he has to have a marching band with him. It's just a rule now. And I love these little pop-up breakdance performances at different events, this time out in Los Angeles, which was very cool. Oh, I've also got a message here from the Fitness Plus team. It says, in collaboration with the board, the Fitness Plus studio welcomes Sydney Cole Alexander of the Emmy-nominated series Severance for a productive cycling session with Coach Kim. Participation on Fitness Plus is strongly encouraged. I was told I had to read that word for word by the board, so I just wanted to share that with you. Of course, we'll link that in the show notes. For fans of the studio, 2 bonuses this week, 2 rewatches of episode 103 and 110 with guest stars Ron Howard and Bryan Cranston alongside Seth Rogen. Just a fun way to re-experience some of those scenes and get the perspective, of course, of the actors on some of the wild things that they had to do for that show. For Chief of War, we've got another take with Jason Momoa, the cliff fight scene, and an Apple Maps collection, a tour of Hawaii and New Zealand. Finally, for fans of Smoke, Ebro Darden had Journey Smollett on Apple Music Radio in conversation recently, and if you want to listen to that conversation, you can do so with the link in the show notes.
And that leads us to our recap for this week. Smoke, the limited series created, written and executive produced by Dennis Lehane, which sees an arson investigator begrudgingly teaming up with a police detective as their race to stop 2 arsonists ignites a twisted game of secrets and suspicions.
I have 2 serial arsonists working this area. No significant leads on either.
You need to get somebody quick before one of them kills again.
What's the motive?
Serial arsonists tend to be powerless in their own lives. They want other people to know what that feels like.
Whatever you do, whatever you know, fire puts a light to it all.
from Apple Studios, created, written, and executive produced by Dennis Lehane, produced by Richard Pepler, based on true events and inspired by Truth Media's acclaimed Firebug podcast. This show is led by the performances of Taron Egerton and Joni Smollett, with an ensemble cast including Rafe Spall, Nuta Maboyo Mwine, Hannah Emily Anderson, Anna Klomsky, Adina Porter, Greg Kinnear, and John Leguizamo. The show also features in its opening title credits an original song from Tom York entitled Dialing In, which really sets the mood. It's really interesting. Now I looked back at Dennis Lehane and his writing and its presentation in film. I think Mystic River, I think Shutter Island. I really love the opening sequence to this show because it is very, very much along the same lines as what has been explored with his work when being adapted to film. Of course, we had Blackbird not that long ago, which Taron Egerton was also a big, big part of. And, you know, what they say, where there's smoke, there's also a fantastic Taron Egerton performance. But let's talk about Dennis Lehane and his writing, which, you know, is the basis of this original mini-series. He writes really complex, flawed characters that are also walking contradictions, and his writing really gets, and I say this short of a better term, but really gets under the skin of the character to make it feel lived in and not performative at all. I think his talent really is shown off by the incredible talented performances and the filmmaking involved both in front and behind the camera here. Have you seen Dennis Lehane's other adaptations for film or TV?
No, I haven't. I was unfamiliar with his work, any of it, before Blackbird, so I haven't read anything of his or seen any of his films or shows. But I will say that his creative voice definitely carries through both of these series. You can tell his hand guiding both of these and the portrayals. And like you said, there's so many people involved with bringing these things to life, but I feel like his vision really shines through in the way that he portrays really twisted and complex characters in a way that's so unflinching. Like, you have to take it all in and be with these people for the time that you're with them, because there's some messed up people in both of these series, and we're going to get into a lot of that with Smoke here in just a minute. He doesn't do it in a way that's gratuitous either. There's a balance there where you can't look away, but it's not a celebration either. It's just this portrayal that it feels non-judgmental in a way, like, not that they're good people, but also that they're fully realized people. Like you said, you get under their skin a bit, and the way they're fleshed out, it really does have a special feel to it in a way that I think it'll be hard for another writer to follow that balance. And so I think maybe that's where some of his previous work in novels comes in, and living with characters in that way, translating that to the screen. I think it comes through very well. And like you said, these characters just feel very real. They feel like real people, and you're able to just go on this journey with them in a way that, I don't know, there are shocking things that happen, but it never feels like it's done for the purpose of shock value, if that makes sense. Well, rather than start with a full recap of the season like we've done with previous recaps, I think we're going to walk through this one step by step, the way we experienced the series together. And so I do want to give a quick spoiler warning for those who haven't seen Smoke. We're going to get into some plot points and the twists and everything, so we don't want to ruin it for anyone. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe go ahead and skip ahead to the next chapter. Do check out the show, though, because I think we're both going to end this discussion with a recommendation to see it. So we do hope you'll see it and listen to the recap later, but don't ruin the twist for yourself, because there's some really cool reveals throughout this one that you're going to want to see and be surprised by. So this is your opportunity to go ahead and skip along, and we're going to jump into the plot of Smoke. A really intriguing series. Of course, it starts off with Taron Egerton as Dave, this arson investigator who's just, I don't know, he's got a dumbfounded, maybe is the word. He's just not making a lot of progress to catch these two arsonists who are terrorizing the neighborhood that he lives in. And now there's a lot of pressure from the outside because one of the arsonists is attacking a chain of grocery stores. And so now their legal team is getting involved and really putting pressure on the department to figure out what's going on. And he's just kind of spinning in circles. And you can tell from meeting Dave that he knows a lot about fire and he knows a lot about investigating fires, but he's just not making the connections. And so that's when, kind of out of nowhere, he's given this partner in the form of Michelle Calderon, played by Journey Smollett. She's this detective who just brings this fresh perspective and is like, have you checked this, this, and this? And she has these resources. And so it's this really interesting pairing between the two of them as they start off together. And I think when we did our highlight of the series just based on the first episode, we talked about the dynamic between the two of them and how they started to form this budding friendship and how it wasn't this rivalry between the two of them throughout the season, which I found refreshing. But of course, at the end of the second episode, there was a big twist that changed the entire dynamic of the season for us. And of course, that is the reveal that Dave Goodson is himself the potato chip arsonist. So he's investigating his own crimes, right? We learned this at the end of the second episode. It's really interesting the way this whole reveal was set up, because I think it was set up in a way that you could have logically gotten there, but it wasn't super obvious. And so we meet Dave, we see that he's writing this book, we see that he's investigating these arsons, we see a little bit of his family life, but then he gets into this really bizarre conversation with his wife and his stepson. The stepson's dad is moving away. Goodson is kind of trying to blow it off, and he's not emotionally receptive to the experience that his family's going through right now. And so he starts sticking his foot in his mouth and really just making the whole thing worse for everybody, right? That conversation was when I started to realize, okay, something in this guy is not okay, because he's not picking up that this is a difficult thing for this kid to go through. And, you know, having a stepdad who says, oh, it's all good, buddy, I'm here for you, like, that's not going to solve everything. And so I think that was a really interesting step to take just before the reveal that the way he deals with the stress of his family is, he goes to the grocery store, sets some potato chips on fire, and walks out with a grin on his face. So I thought that was a really cool way of revealing it. To me, it takes the show out of the mystery realm and more into just the anticipation of seeing how this is all going to play out now, because we know who the arsonists are. We meet the other arsonists in the first episode, and we'll talk more about him in just a moment. But in the second episode, we now know who both arsonists are. And I think that actually the fact that they just play that hand so early really makes for an interesting setup for the season.
Yeah, because it turns into a character study, right? As opposed to a mystery, which I thought was great. I kind of sussed it pretty early on that Taron Egerton was one of the arsonists. I think there were a couple of conversations where he was almost giving too much credit to someone committing such heinous crimes. It didn't gel for me at all.
I think part of what you're talking about could also come from his respect for and fascination with fire. I mean, you could tell this guy really, it starts off looking like respect, and it turns out to be more love, I think. But even from the very first narration of the first episode, he's talking about fire and the power of it. And we see this flashback of him as a firefighter being trapped in this building and barely getting out. And then it turns out, of course, that all that narration is him transcribing the book that he's writing, because of course he is, right? I mean, if it couldn't be any more obvious what kind of person this guy is, he also feels like the entire world needs to know his thoughts on fire and the world. And, it just, the more we learn about him, again, I think starting with a conversation with his stepson, but probably even further back than that, that's when it started to be clear for me. But we just learned, this guy, very self-absorbed. He thinks he's a genius, and he thinks that, these things that he's doing, he pretends to investigate himself. He walks with a limp coming out of the fires that he sets, except for he can't even do that right because he messes up, and Calderon catches it on camera that the guy's faking the limp. Yeah. He just thinks that all this stuff he's doing is so clever, and then he's putting it all down in a book as if no one's going to read the book and make the connection. So really interesting characterization there, but starting with that fascination and seeing that, like you said, I think the idea of a character study is a great way of putting it, because that's really what this show becomes, is a deep dive into his psyche as, of course, he's hurtling towards being caught, what's going through his mind and how he thinks he's getting away with this, and how he can just go into work every day and pretend to investigate himself and then go home at night and set fires. It really is an incredible character that he's portraying here. That's pretty much all you need to know about Dave. His partner is Michelle Calderon, played by Journey Smollett. A little bit more about her. She's a former Marine turned detective who's found herself banished to arson investigation due to a fallout in her romantic relationship with police captain Steve Burt, played by Rafe Spall. Still have trouble believing that was really him throughout the season. He's just playing such a different character from what we're used to from Trying, but a great performance there. And then she has her own complicated past with fire due to a traumatic childhood experience with her mother that we learn more about throughout the season. But, I think one thing that we see with every character here is that their relationship with fire is unique. And that's a whole element of the story, is fire as like almost a character, and you have a relationship with it. But the other arsonist, as I alluded to, his name is Freddie Fasano. He's played by Natari Guma Mwaho Mwine. He's a fry cook who moonlights as the milk jug arsonist. And very just interesting, I think, juxtaposition between our two arsonists here and their motivations. And again, it's not a mystery who either of these people are, because we're introduced to them so early on, but we spend so much time with them, not only in the crimes they're committing, but also seeing their everyday lives and why they do what they do. It makes it so interesting. Goodson's looking for a thrill, right? He just wants to be the smart guy. He wants to feel like he has the upper hand over everybody. Freddie, he's more down on his luck, right? He's working as a fry cook. We learn later he's come out of the foster system. He's been through a lot. He's someone who he's not doing this for fun. He's doing it for revenge, not only on specific people, but just revenge on the world in general, right? We learn that he will go out to bars and look for happy couples and then follow them home. And, then there's a fire at their home, and sometimes they survive and sometimes they don't. It's very dark and horrible stuff, but the fire is Freddie's way of dealing with this unfair world that he's put in. And we see the way that he's put down, even in the life that he lives every day, at work. And he aspires at one point to be a manager and try to break out of this cycle that he's found himself in. And again, just gets knocked back down and goes back to his old ways. But the thing that Dave says pretty early on in the season that I think is interesting, he says the arsonists do what they do because of a lack of control in their lives. And I think that is something we see in both Dave and Freddie, is that they're not in control, right? Dave can't find this arsonist that he's looking for. He's living in his wife's home with her son and just doesn't really have a lot of control over his life. And then Freddie, of course, feeling like he can't break out of what he's in. And I think that though they have that in common, my reaction, at least to each of them, has been vastly different, because the more time I spent with Freddie, I actually felt really bad for him. Of course, there's no discounting, setting fires, hurting people, even costing people their lives, obviously a terrible thing to do. But I think looking at the motivation between the two of them, you can clearly see that, Freddie's motivation, it's coming from a place of being damaged by things beyond his control. He's not dealing with that in the right way, but I did actually, spending time with Freddie, feel really bad for him. And it was a really interesting contrast there.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting pairing as well of the two criminals, right? Because as you say, you've got one who I think's just born with a bit of evil in them, right? And has that thrill of not getting caught. And that thrill's taken even to the bedroom, which was a wild scene. Who lets someone set fire to their stomach? Hey, I know people are into kinks, and I'm not kink shaming at all, but there was a lot of trust going in on that one. But Freddie, for me, it was really interesting because it's like that old kind of tale, right, of what can happen when people are just constantly beaten down. That's at least what I got from it. And also, I think, treating strangers kindly. Some rough stuff could have happened to one of his colleagues sooner or later that didn't, but did happen to those higher up at the chicken franchise who rejected him out of kind, really. Didn't even give him a moment, although did he really have it all together to become a manager? No. But could they have offered at least the steps in order for him to be able to progress up the ladder and get some training and stuff? Sure. But people want these perfect specimens all the time, and that's not what life is, and it's not who we're surrounded by.
Yeah, and my thing with Freddie is no one ever invested in him, right? He didn't have a family. He ends up in this job where he's just treated like, a number on a schedule, and he never was given a chance to be really anything more than that, even though he mustered it within himself to want to be that. And there is one relationship that he has throughout the season. That's with Brenda, played by Adina Porter, who's a hairdresser who, for whatever reason, latches onto him and really loves him, gives him a free haircut, tries to help him prepare for his interview. And that relationship I thought was really interesting because he, at that point, because it's been so long and no one has ever done that for him, he doesn't know how to respond to that, and eventually lashes out against it, which is actually the pivotal scene where, of course, Dave and Freddie end up meeting because Dave gets to bust in and be the hero and stop the fire. But yeah, Freddie's characterization, I think there's a lot to that. It's like I said, these characters are complex. And it's not that nothing bad ever happened to Dave. I mean, he talks about his mom and how she abandoned him, but I think that the way that he responds to it, and it obviously impacts the way he thinks about women and some of the things he says to the other guys and things like that. It's such a difference in the two of them, the life circumstances they faced and how they both end up committing these crimes. But again, I think the way that they're perceived, at least by the audience, I think is very, very different. And of course, the places they end up are very different as well, because both of the arsonists are eventually caught, but it is not a straightforward path to getting there by any means. And that's the other theme, I think, that stuck out to me throughout the series. And this is something you referenced when talking about Dennis Lehane, is that even the other characters who aren't the criminals, they all have their dark sides, right? They all have their secrets and rough edges and things that they're not proud of, that they don't want to come to light. Even Calderon, who I think is kind of the protagonist of the series, she's the closest thing the series has to like a straight man, I think. Even she, I think, takes some steps that go too far and taints of the work that she's doing. And we see that pretty early on. She frames a firefighter for domestic terrorism when he turns out not to be an arsonist. Was that the first or second episode? That was really early in the series. And the fact that she went that far to cover up a mistake that she made in her investigation, she broke and entered into someone's home trying to investigate them instead of getting a warrant. And then when he found her, she put him in jail for a totally unrelated crime that, to be fair, he was, creating a bunker and stockpiling weapons. It's not like he wasn't, again, no one comes out clean here, but she just like straight up frames him for a crime and, then just moves on with her life and the investigation that she's doing. And again, it comes back to that party they were having where they were playing Bang Bang by AJR, which every time I think about that, I'm like, surely no one actually like in the police force thinks of that song as like a celebration of like, anyway, such a strange thing. But again, these characters, they're not perfect and we have to look at their flaws. You've also got Harvey, the captain, played by Greg Kinnear, who, seems like a decent guy, and he's good friends with Goodson, and then it turns out towards the end that Goodson has some dirt on him. He's been embezzling from the department for decades, and Goodson knows about it. So it's another one of those things, all these compromises that people are making and the way they put themselves in positions where, well, now I can't point out his mistakes because he knows mine, and we'll all be in trouble.
Do you think, because it was very much left open, whether he knew he had an arsonist in his ranks but just chose to ignore it?
I think it was probably more like choosing not to look at the evidence in that way, just not letting that possibility cross your mind that someone you've worked with and know so well could be that person. And again, like you said, there's so much evidence that shows it. I mean, they at one point track his movements on a map from a conference that he's attending, and the whole way home he's just setting fires as he goes, and you see his car at every place. But I mean, you still don't want to believe that person could be who other people are saying they are. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it was a cover up so much as just denial and like closing ranks. Anytime any kind of accusation comes their way, they just kind of shut it down and get that person out of there. And we do see that actually with John Leguizamo's character, Ezra Esposito, who was Goodson's former partner, who figures out what he's doing and tries to alert people. And Goodson, again, gets rid of him. He what does he do? He like messes with his gun in a way that he accidentally shoots himself and then is proven incompetent and gets dismissed from the force. And man, when they finally brought John Leguizamo into the series, seeing the rage as he was talking about that incident and then some of the evidence that he had all along that no one would listen to him, right? And that was really interesting as well. So it's this bad behavior that sometimes gets ignored or the evidence gets denied because you just don't want to believe that it could be someone, within those ranks that could be doing it. Eventually, there is a task force that's put together to try to catch Goodson. That includes Calderon, it includes Burke, it includes Englehart and Ezra Esposito, and then there's another federal investigator who comes in for a couple of episodes. And they want to catch him in the act and stop him. And even with all these people coming after him, they still, they're trying to do it by the book. They're trying to do it the right way. And because they're playing by the rules, they can't catch him. He's just out setting fires. It's wild, the things that he's getting away with. And, Goodson is smart, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is. And he really thinks he has it over on everybody. When everyone knows what's happening, they just can't prove it. And that leads us to the penultimate episode when Calderon makes her move to finally get him caught. This whole sequence was just so surprising to me, the way it played out. She and Burke get into a heated exchange. He puts his hands on her, and she retaliates and accidentally collapses his windpipe, which she has to just watch him suffocate to death. In order to cover that up, again, it all comes back to fire, Sigmund. She thinks, well, the solution to this problem that I have now, which, by the way, something about that scene that bothers me is that he motions toward his pen. Like, even in that moment as he's like losing his life, he motions towards a pen to try to get her to open his windpipe. And I'm like, this is a Marine. Surely she should have known that technique to save somebody's life. But anyway, again, very complex situations. But her solution to the problem is to set fire to his house and then to plant Goodson's DNA at the scene because he left some rubber gloves in her car. And in the midst of setting this fire and fleeing the scene, she remembers, oh yeah, I've got some of his DNA. Let me plant this at the scene so that then he gets caught and arrested and blamed for that fire. So again, it's really interesting kind of, I don't know if morality of the series is really the right way of putting it, but all these people are breaking the rules. And in the end, the only way to beat the guy who's breaking the rules is to break the rules yourself. And there's no good behavior by anyone really on this show.
The end of her day reflects the beginning of her day, because Michelle's day begins with a confrontation with Dave at a restaurant, which just so happens to be across the road from her childhood home, which was burnt to a crisp and, reflective of her childhood trauma, which after Michelle says, hey, we know you're the arsonist, we just need to prove it, he starts to delve into her personal trauma and use it as a weapon. And I mean, it's a really, really interesting back and forth. But it just so happens the next day, the bravado of Dave is taken down a few notches, right?
Yeah, he wakes up to this news of the fire and immediately realizes, I think in one of his better moments, he realizes immediately what's happening and that he's about to be framed for this fire, and has this hilarious conversation with his ex-wife, who is there with him saying, you know, I was here all night. And she says, I don't know that. And basically, I was asleep. I can't vouch for you. And just kind of washes her hands of him. But this fire that Michelle sets, that's not the end of it, because, she does plant the evidence, and that's eventually used against Dave. But in the meantime, her fire also just so happens to spread to a lumber mill and then explode into this giant wildfire. And so, that's another just layer to this whole story, and the bad behavior that we're talking about here, the consequences of some of these things. When you play with fire, you get burned. And in this case, a lot of people got burned because there's evacuations and, the forest fire and just all this damage that's happening. And there's this amazing sequence in the finale where Dave and Michelle actually drive into the wildfire, supposedly, I guess, to investigate it. But of course, Dave's just kind of spiraling at this point and, driving recklessly and basically telling Michelle, if I go down, you're going down with me, and really wants her to revel in what she's done, because she really has to compromise herself here, not only with the wildfire, but also then there's this security footage, of course, of her setting the fire that she has to get her brother to break into the house and delete this footage. Again, it just really spirals out of control, the decision that she makes here. And it ends with Goodson purposefully wrecking his car and throwing Michelle from it, and an attempt, I guess, to kill her. I mean, it was brutal the way that went down. But Michelle, the superhero, I suppose, just stands right back up and rips him out of the car and puts him under arrest. It's such a weird mix of like bad decisions with terrible consequences, but also it got her where she wanted to be, and really, really interesting mix there. There's no accountability really for anyone throughout this season, except for when they finally get Goodson, at least in the interrogation room. He's under arrest, but it's still not totally clear that they have him completely nailed down necessarily either. Eventually, Ezra and the federal investigator do find his arsonist disguise in his car. And I guess that's kind of like the final nail in the coffin in terms of thinking that they've got him nailed down. But it doesn't end all that conclusively in terms of exactly what's going to happen to him and whether or not he's going to be able to weasel his way out of it. To me, the real kind of catharsis or conclusion to the story isn't so much Dave being arrested, because again, that's, we don't see him getting booked in jail and that kind of thing. The real conclusion to the story is actually this final twist at the very end, where we find out that Goodson is not even the person he's been portraying to himself. We knew he was putting on a facade for everyone else, but in the very final moments of the season, we actually find out that he's been under a delusion with his own self-image as well. Because in the wake of all the evidence against him and Michelle's interrogation and him finally actually being called to account for the things that he's done, his delusion breaks for just a moment, and he can no longer keep up the charade of the young, charming hero, even with himself. And he looks in the mirror and he sees himself as he really is, a criminal who's past his prime. And they portray that through his physical appearance. He's actually older than he sees himself as. He's balding. He's not this young, handsome guy. Taron Egerton, I think some of the stuff that was being said about him, the way some of the characters interacted with him, I was like, something about his appearance doesn't really match up with the way that people are talking to him, or just some of the things that are said about and implied about his age and things like that. It's like, this doesn't really match up with the actor they picked for this. And so it all kind of comes together in this big reveal. There's another hint about this reveal earlier when he's in the hospital and he's recovering from his car wreck. He looks in the mirror and just for a moment he sees someone else, and that actually turns out to be his actual reflection. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Little seed that was planted there. And again, just adding to this characterization of this person who throughout the season, it's clear he's like a pyromaniac. He's obviously a menace, but in that moment you realize he's more than that. He's actually a sociopath, and he's just like fully unconnected from reality, even of his own appearance and the way he sees himself. He really does believe he's this hero and is able to separate that out from these crimes that he's committing. And it really was this shocking twist at the end that felt earned, but also like it was a good way of wrapping up the season and finishing this real portrait of just this very damaged person. Definitely check out Smoke on Apple TV Plus if you haven't. But if you're looking for more to watch this week, every week we share with you the watch list, our TV app highlights of different shows and films that you can check out through the TV app. Sigmund, you already mentioned Superman, available in 3D on Apple Vision Pro. That sounds like an awesome way to experience the film. I definitely plan on doing that because I still haven't seen Superman yet, but I think that's going to be the best way to do it. But other than Superman, what's on the watch list this week?
Well, I'm going to start with two animated feature films, which may, and I don't know this for sure, but may just be in 3D as well on Apple Vision Pro before too long. They are The Bad Guys 2, in which this sequel sees the bad guys forced to come out of retirement and join forces with an all-female criminal squad to perform one last heist. The first film, a real popular film amongst not just young people but families. I didn't really hear much with regard to the sequel. I'm interested to take another dip into the Bad Guys universe. And I'm also interested in a new Pixar film. There was a point where Pixar films felt quite special, and I think animation-wise they are, but the storytelling has been a little bit hit and miss. Mainly because some of the characters just hadn't felt that original. Some of the worlds had been revisited maybe one too many times. I think that's going to be different with this film, Elio, which follows an 11-year-old boy named Elio Solis, who is mistaken for the intergalactic ambassador of Earth after being beamed up to the Communiverse by aliens, and then must navigate a crisis that involves the warlord father of an alien he befriended. The character design in this looks absolutely fantastic, colourful. Just the stills and the trailer put a big smile on my face. And yeah, I think this is where I'm going to give Pixar another shot. In terms of original series, we have The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox on Hulu. This is again another adaptation of a true crime story that centres on Amanda Knox's harrowing journey after being wrongfully imprisoned for her roommate's murder, where her battle to prove her innocence and regain her freedom is paramount. Lastly, on Friday sees the return of Raphael Bob Waksberg and his first Netflix follow-up to the animated powerhouse that was BoJack Horseman. This new series is titled Long Story Short and is a animated family comedy, though I say family in exclamation marks because I don't know if this is family friendly, so to speak, but the animation style and the talent involved just gave enough reason for it to punctuate the end of our watch list picks for this week. And with the end of our watch list picks is the introduction of our up next picks for this week. And mine is Familiar Touch, which actually released on Tuesday in the Apple TV app for premium VOD release. Familiar Touch is a coming of age or a coming of old age film from both Music Box Films and director Sarah Friedland. It stars Kathleen Chalfant as Ruth, a retired cook who prepares breakfast in her sunny and cozy kitchen, a dish she's made many, many times before. Although small and puzzling errors are now punctuating her comfortable routine. Then her son arrives to dine with her and she mistakes him for a suitor, with her date then taking her to an assisted living facility, which Ruth does not remember that she had previously selected for herself. Among her fellow memory care residents, Ruth feels lost and adrift, certain that she has found herself somewhere she does not belong, and as she slowly begins to accept the warmth and support of care workers Vanessa and Brian, she finds new ways to ground herself in her body, even as her mind embarks on a journey all its own. I wanted to read you the whole synopsis there because I wanted to give you a real kind of feel for this film and everything that entails. This is heartbreakingly authentic, but also very gentle in its portrayal and the film's overall nature. This film is really for anyone with aging parents or grandparents. I definitely learned a lot from it, and it reminded me of a different perspective that I'll use going forward as a carer for elderly relatives. This is a superb, but as I say, heartbreaking exploration of aging, mortality, memory, and the intergenerational dynamics that I don't think anyone really ever prepares you for when the roles reverse. This also features the best performance of the year so far from Kathleen Chalfant, who plays Ruth, the central focus of this film. It's truly, truly special, and genuinely I think this is like Academy Award winning worthy. And so I hope more and more people hear and see this film. It's a story that you don't see often told in film, and if you do, not with such expert craft. So yeah, familiar touch, now available on PVOD, on the TV app, comes highly, highly recommended. May have also broken into my top films of the year, which definitely could be more than 5 come December or January when we recap that, Devon.
Well, even if we limit it to 5, you'll still bring 7 anyway.
You know me too well.
But this film sounds truly special and wonderful. And this definitely sounds like something that you don't hear a lot of and that we really need to hear more of, and a great perspective. And I'm definitely going to be adding to my list to check out, not only based on the synopsis, but also your heartfelt recommendation, Sigmund. Thank you for sharing that. Going in a totally different direction for my pick this week, Sigmund. There's nothing really heartfelt or important about this, but it is hilarious. Maybe there's a little bit more heart this season than in the first one. My pick this week is the second season of Peacemaker, which debuts Thursday on HBO Max. Of course, it stars John Cena as everyone's favorite anti-hero in the DC universe. The series is created by James Gunn, who, of course, is now in charge of the DC universe. And it's really interesting, he made the first season of this series before he took over. He was working on the Suicide Squad world before he was put in charge of the entire DC cinematic world. And so now that he's actually rebooted that world with the new Superman and is moving away from all the past continuity, it's really interesting to see the way Peacemaker is actually going to continue to exist within that world, because it was something that James Gunn created. And so in order to keep that going, what they're doing with the second season is they're taking Peacemaker into the multiverse. And so he decides that he doesn't want to be a villain anymore. He wants to be a hero. And so he has to, basically, he knows he can't do that within the world he's living. So he goes through some portals to some other worlds and tries to become the hero that he wants to be. So it'll be an interesting way to go with the character. They're bringing back the cast from the first season, so it's not like you're going to be missing out on anybody. If you enjoyed the first season of Peacemaker, it'll be, I think, probably more of that humor with the same people, but maybe some different takes on some of those characters, which will be fun.
I'm really, really looking forward to this, Devon. This would have been my up next pick as well, if we were having a joint one, but we don't want to shortchange people. It also stars, alongside John Cena, Robert Patrick as his father, Augie. And I'll be interested to see if he tries to follow him across the multiverses and what the multiverse version of him is like. Because, of course, his dad is a white supremacist. And I nearly corrected you when you said HBO Max, and I had to stop myself because I realized what year I was in.
Oh yeah, what do we call it anymore? We don't even know. But as long as you can find the app and get Peacemaker going, and as long as they leave the intro song the same, because man, that was so good. Yes. Or maybe they want to do a riff on it, that's fine, but I hope they keep that theme because it was incredible. Anyway, Peacemaker, Thursday on HBO Max, whatever you want to call it. Just go find it. That's all from us for this week. Thank you so much for listening. We always appreciate everyone sticking with us each week. And of course, we would love to hear from you. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes, or we have a contact form. You can reach out to us there. We'll leave a link to that as well.
We'll be back next week to break down the return of Invasion and the week in Apple TV. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade. and have a great week.